The bitter winter wind howled across the Colorado plains, and it sounded like a woman screaming. It almost drowned out Rebecca Rowan's desperate sobs as she huddled deeper into the broken, overturned stagecoach. The December of 1876 had brought the cruelest blizzard Greenwich had seen in decades. And now, here she was, 15 miles from town, stranded in a coffin of splintered wood and freezing air. The driver was dead. Not just dead, but slumped over the front seat with a dark, frozen hole in his chest, a gunshot wound. The horses were gone, stolen by the same men who'd taken everything she owned. Everything but the thin clothes on her back and the silver locket around her neck. Rebecca's fingers were gone. Not stolen, but numb. Useless. She couldn't even feel them as she tried to pull her thin Boston traveling dress tighter. It was a fashionable dress, but it was a death sentence out here. The coach was on its side, one wheel missing, a dark, broken shape against an endless, screaming white. "I refuse to die here," she whispered, her teeth chattering so hard she could barely form the words. But her body was betraying her. She had traveled too far. She had survived her father's financial ruin, survived his death, survived selling every last piece of her old life to buy a ticket west. She was supposed to be a schoolteacher in Greenwich. Now that dream felt as far away as the sun. The wind shifted, and Rebecca's heart stopped. She heard something, not just the wind, not the sobs. It was a rhythmic crunch, hooves, breaking the deep snow. Hope and fear went to war inside her chest. Were the bandits returning to finish the job, or was it salvation? Nathan Ellis spotted the dark shape of the coach from a quarter-mile out. His eyes were trained for this, trained to pick out the one wrong thing in a landscape of white. He'd been tracking the Blackwater gang since they'd hit the Henderson homestead 2 days back. The blizzard had forced him to give up the chase. But now, this. He didn't expect survivors. Not in this cold, not after this long. He dismounted his big gelding, his gloved hand resting on the revolver at his hip. Caution meant survival out here. The snow had piled up against the wreckage. He saw the driver, frozen stiff, his own pistol still clutched in a pale, icy hand. "Hello," he called out, his voice deep and strong, cutting through the wind. "Anybody alive in there?" A faint sound from inside, a scuffling. Nathan drew his weapon. "Please," a woman's voice, weak, thin, but unmistakable. "Help me." He holstered the gun and moved. He put his shoulder to the damaged door, wrenching it open against the packed snow. What he found inside stopped him cold. A young woman, auburn hair plastered to her face, was huddled in the far corner. Her lips were a terrifying shade of blue. She was trembling violently. But her eyes were green, and they were furious. "Ma'am," he said, pulling off his heavy duster in one smooth motion. He wrapped it around her, the thick wool smelling of horses and wood smoke. "My name's Nathan Ellis. I ranch about 5 miles west of here." "Rebecca Rowan," she managed, the words catching on her chattering teeth. They took everything." Nathan nodded. He'd seen the gang's handiwork before. He helped her up, his hand strong on her arm as she swayed. "Hypothermia. She was on borrowed time." "My horse can carry us both," he said. It wasn't a question. "You won't last another hour out here." She looked at the dead driver, and her eyes closed. "I'll send word to the sheriff when the storm breaks," he said, reading her mind. He lifted her, surprised at how light she was. He placed her on the saddle and mounted behind her, his solid warmth a shock against her back. He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her, sharing his heat. "My home is yours, Miss Rowan," he said gruffly, his voice rumbling against her ear. "At least until you're back on your feet." Rebecca leaned back, exhaustion pulling her down into a dark, warm place. She was grateful. Of course she was. But as the horse moved, carrying them away from the wreckage, a strange thought pricked her fogged mind. She had been stranded. 15 miles from town, in the worst blizzard in decades. And this man, this Nathan Ellis, he just happened to be riding by. The journey was a blur, a waking nightmare of cold and darkness, punctuated by Nathan's voice. "Stay with me, Miss Rowan. Not much farther now." His arms were like steel bands, holding her secure. She drifted, floating in and out of consciousness. The cold was so deep it felt like a part of her, like her bones had turned to ice. Then, through the swirling snow, she saw it. A cabin, a substantial log house, smoke curling from a stone chimney, a beacon of warmth in the endless white. A large barn and several outbuildings stood nearby. This wasn't a shack. This was a proper ranch. He guided the horse to the porch, dismounted, and lifted her down. Her legs buckled instantly. They were useless. Without a word, Nathan Ellis swept her into his arms and carried her inside. The blast of heat from a roaring fireplace hit her like a physical blow. She gasped, and then she looked around. This was not the rough bachelor cabin she'd expected. The floors were polished, colorful woven rugs lay scattered. The furniture was sturdy, handcrafted, and beautiful. And one whole wall was lined with books, hundreds of them. He placed her gently in a rocking chair near the fire. "First things first," he said, his voice laced with concern. "We need to get you warm and dry." He vanished into another room and returned with a stack of clothing. "These belong to my sister, Sarah. She stayed here last summer. They'll be big, but they're dry." Rebecca clutched the bundle. Her mind was clearing, and with clarity came the sharp sting of propriety. A single woman, alone with a man she just met, in his home. She hadn't been raised for this. He saw her hesitation. "There's a screen in the corner. You can change behind it. I'll make coffee. Heat up some stew." The simple kindness in his voice made her eyes sting. She nodded, waiting until his back was turned at the cook stove before she limped to the screen. Her fingers were clumsy, still numb, but she managed to peel off her frozen dress. The clothes he'd given her were warm flannel, woolen trousers, thick socks. Trousers, her Boston sensibilities screamed, but her frozen body sighed in relief. When she emerged, a steaming mug of coffee was waiting. He handed her a bowl of thick, rich stew. "Better?" he asked. She nodded, wrapping her hands around the mug. "I don't know how to thank you, Mr. Ellis." "Nathan," he corrected, "and no thanks needed. Anyone would have done the same." She took a spoonful of stew. It was heaven. "I don't believe that's true," she said. He sat across from her, cradling his own mug. She studied him. He was maybe 30. Dark hair, sun-weathered skin, and the most remarkable blue eyes. Eyes that seemed to see everything. "Where were you headed?" he asked. "Greenwich. I'm the new schoolteacher." His eyebrows rose. "Schoolteacher. They've been trying to fill that job for months." "Which is why they need a teacher who believes in it," she said, a spark of her old self returning. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Greenwich is getting more than they bargained for." "If I ever make it there," she said, the reality crashing back. "Those men, the Blackwater gang you called them, they took everything. My money, my books. All I have left is this." Her hand went to her mother's locket. "You'll stay here," he said, his voice firm. "Until the storm passes, then I'll take you into Greenwich myself. I couldn't impose." "It's not an imposition," he cut her off. "The next stage won't be through for a week, if it clears." He gave that small smile again. "Besides, it's nice to have company besides my foreman." Exhaustion was pulling her under. He saw it. "The bedroom's through there," he said, nodding to a door. "You take it. I'll bunk by the fire." "I couldn't take your bed." "You can and you will," he said, gentle but final. She was too tired to argue. The bedroom was as well appointed as the rest of the cabin. A large bed with a handmade quilt, a chest of drawers. As she slipped between the clean sheets, her last thought was that for a man who lived alone on a remote ranch, Nathan Ellis was surprisingly refined. Then she saw it. In the corner, half hidden in the shadow, was another rocking chair. A small one, child-sized. Rebecca woke to bright sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee. She sat up, her muscles screaming in protest. The events of yesterday flooded back. The coach, the driver, the cold. Nathan. She smoothed her borrowed clothes and ran her fingers through her tangled hair, then stepped into the main room. He was at the stove, his back to her, flipping flapjacks. His sleeves were rolled up, showing strong, corded forearms. "Good morning," she said softly. He turned, spatula in hand, and gave her a real smile. It transformed his face. "Morning, Miss Rowan. How are you feeling?" "Better, thank you." She moved toward the fire. "But we're snowed in," she said, stating the obvious as she looked out the window. The world was a blinding, beautiful white. 2 feet, at least. "We are," he said, setting a plate of flapjacks on the table. "Sit. You need your strength." As he poured her coffee, she asked, "Do you always cook this well?" A shadow passed over his face. "Quick as a hummingbird's wing. Had to learn, after my wife died, 5 years ago. I'm so sorry." Now the cabin made sense. The books, the furniture. This wasn't a bachelor pad. It was a home. "What happened?" He sat across from her. "Childbirth. Lost them both. Elizabeth and our son." He said it matter-of-factly, but she could feel the grief radiating from him, a cold spot in the warm room. "Life out here is hard," he said, looking away. "You adapt, or you break." He picked up his fork. The conversation was over. He asked about Boston. She told him about her father, her teaching certificate, her lack of family. "Frontier life isn't easy for a woman alone," he said. "I'm stronger than I look," she replied, chin high. His eyes smiled. "I don't doubt it. Anyone who survives what you did has plenty of grit." After breakfast, he went to tend the livestock. Rebecca, unable to sit still, tidied the cabin. She washed the dishes, swept the floor. It felt good to be useful, to repay his kindness. When he returned, stamping snow from his boots, he paused in the doorway. "You didn't need to do that." "I wanted to." He nodded, understanding. "Well," he said, reaching into his coat, "since you're feeling better, I thought you might want these." He handed her several books. Emerson, Tennyson, a well-worn copy of Jane Eyre. "These are wonderful," she breathed. "You read much, Mr. Nathan?" "When winter comes," he said, a hint of shyness in his voice. "My wife, Elizabeth, she taught me to appreciate them." Rebecca traced the spine of the Jane Eyre. She had excellent taste. They fell into a comfortable rhythm. He worked at his desk, reviewing ledgers. She lost herself in the book, the storm outside fading away. She found herself watching him, his quiet strength, the way he moved with purpose. She felt safe here, safer than she'd felt in years. Over a venison stew that evening, she asked him about the ranch. He told her about coming west after the war, fighting for the Union, buying this land when it was nothing, building it from scratch. "Started with 20 head of cattle and a broken-down shack," he said, gesturing around the room. "Now I run 500 head. It's a lovely home," she said. He studied her. What about you, Miss Rowan? What are you hoping to build in Greenwich? A life of purpose, she said. Teaching children, showing them the world through books. Noble ambitions, he said. Perhaps naive, she admitted. You survived an outlaw raid and a blizzard, he pointed out. I'd say you're learning fast. They laughed, and Rebecca was struck by how natural it felt. As the fire burned low, he rose to add a log. Storm should break tomorrow. I can take you into Greenwich. An unexpected pang hit her. She didn't want to leave. It's no imposition, he said, his voice quiet, his eyes meeting hers in the firelight. Truth is, it's been nice having someone to talk with. The simple admission touched her. She understood loneliness. Good night, Rebecca, he said, using her first name. Good night, Nathan. In the bedroom, she lay in the darkness. Her thoughts kept returning to him, his kindness, the deep sadness behind his eyes, and the small, child-sized rocking chair in the corner of her room, the one he never mentioned, the one that seemed to rock, just slightly, in the draft from the window. She told herself it was just the wind. Dawn brought clear skies. The storm was over. Nathan and his foreman, a weathered man named Charlie, cleared a path. After breakfast, Nathan hitched a team to a wagon. Charlie says the main trail is broken, he announced. We can leave. Rebecca nodded, a strange reluctance gripping her. He insisted she keep the borrowed clothes. The journey to Greenwich was beautiful. Snow-covered pines, distant mountains. Nathan pointed out landmarks, told her stories. He told her about a prospector who found a 20-pound gold nugget. Is that common? She asked. For every man who strikes it rich, 100 go broke, he said. They talked. About his ranch, her plans for the school. He approved of her idea to start a library. Knowledge is a powerful thing, he said. By mid-afternoon, they crested a hill. Greenwich lay below, a storybook town nestled in the valley. It's beautiful, she breathed. But as they descended, a knot of anxiety tightened in her stomach. What if they'd hired someone else? School's there, he said, sensing her fear. Boarding house is there. We'll see Mayor Thornton first. His office is above the bank. He helped her down from the wagon, his hands lingering at her waist. She flushed. Mayor Thornton, a portly man with mutton chop whiskers, was stunned. Miss Rowan, we'd given you up for lost. The stage company reported the attack. We feared the worst. Miss Rowan was on that coach, Nathan said, his voice flat and authoritative. I found her in the wreckage. The driver was killed. The Blackwater gang took everything. The mayor was horrified, then sympathetic. My dear lady, what an ordeal. But the town will help you. We need a teacher. The children are running wild. He took them to the schoolhouse. It was simple, one room, but clean and sound. 30 students, ages 6 to 16, the mayor said. The pay is $30 a month, room and board included. Can you start Monday? Yes, Rebecca said, her dream suddenly real again. They went to the boarding house. Mrs. Peterson, the landlady, was plump and shrewd. She took one look at Rebecca's borrowed trousers and bustled her inside, clucking about, dreadful bandits. Rebecca turned to Nathan. Their time was up. You're all set then, he said, his face unreadable. Thanks to you, she said softly. How can I ever repay you? No repayment necessary. An awkward silence fell. Will you be returning to your ranch? She asked. I have business at the mercantile. Need supplies. I'll head back in the morning. Then, I suppose this is goodbye. He looked at her, his blue eyes intense. For now, he said. Greenwich isn't so far. I come to town for supplies. A small flutter of hope. I'd be glad to see a familiar face. Then I'll make a point to call on you, he smiled. See how you're faring. I'd like that. Until then, Miss Rowan." He tipped his hat. She watched him walk away, his tall figure straight and sure. Only when he'd turned the corner did she go inside. Her new life had begun. But as she unpacked the few items Nathan had given her, she couldn't shake a strange feeling. He had saved her. He was kind. He was handsome. So why did she feel a prickle of fear? Weeks passed. Rebecca threw herself into her work. The schoolhouse, once strange, became her domain. The children, at first wary, came to love their new teacher. Mrs. Peterson, the landlady, was a font of gossip and good advice. Through her, Rebecca met the town, the doctor's wife, the blacksmith's daughter. But despite her new life, her thoughts drifted. Back to the ranch, back to Nathan Ellis. She'd catch herself watching the main road, her heart leaping at every tall rider, then sinking in disappointment. January turned to February. One Wednesday, after dismissing her students, she heard a knock. "Come in," she called. The door opened, and there he was, Nathan Ellis, hat in hand, snowflakes dusting his broad shoulders. Her heart did a stupid, unprofessional leap. Mr. Ellis, what a surprise. "Miss Rowan," he smiled, and it warmed the entire room. "You're looking well. Teaching agrees with you." She smoothed her skirt, blushing. "I'm enjoying it." "I brought something," he said, reaching into his coat. He pulled out a small paper-wrapped package. "For your school library." Inside were 3 books: folk tales, a natural history primer, practical mathematics. "They're perfect," she breathed, touched by his thoughtfulness. "I spoke with the Millers at the bookshop. They helped me choose." A comfortable silence fell. "I was wondering," he said, his voice suddenly shy, "if you might allow me to escort you to dinner. The hotel serves a decent meal." She was surprised and thrilled. "I'd like that very much." 6 o'clock? The hours crawled. She changed into her best dress, a deep blue wool. Mrs. Peterson lent her a shawl, her eyes twinkling. "Mr. Ellis is well respected," the landlady said, not even pretending to be discreet. "Keeps to himself, but he's a good man. In all the years since his Elizabeth passed, I've never known him to take a woman to dinner at the hotel." The hotel dining room was buzzing. Rebecca felt every eye in town on them as Nathan held her chair. "I fear we're providing the town with gossip," she murmured. "Small towns run on gossip," he smiled. "Best not to mind it." The meal was wonderful. They talked. He told her about his ranch. She told him about her students. She found herself drawn to his quiet intelligence, his strength. When he walked her home, the night was clear and cold. "Thank you for a lovely evening," she said at the boarding house steps. "The pleasure was mine," he said. He took her gloved hand. "I'll be back in town mid-March, after a trip to Denver. Would it be acceptable if I called on you then?" "I'd be disappointed if you didn't." His expression softened. He lifted her hand and pressed a brief, warm kiss to her knuckles. "Good night, Rebecca." "Good night, Nathan." She floated up to her room. Mrs. Peterson was right. He was a good man. So why did she lock her door, a habit she'd never had before? She told herself it was just the frontier. You had to be cautious. But that wasn't it. She was thinking about the stagecoach, the dead driver, the Blackwater gang. A few days later, she was at the sheriff's office. Sheriff Holden was a kind, older man. She was there to sign the official report of the robbery. "A terrible thing, Miss Rowan," he said, blotting the ink. "Awful. We ain't had trouble like that in a long time." "Has there been any word on the Blackwater gang?" Sheriff Holden looked up, his brow furrowed. He pushed his glasses up his nose. "The... who?" "The Blackwater gang," Rebecca repeated. "Mr. Ellis, the man who rescued me, he said that's who it was." The sheriff leaned back in his chair, his gaze sharp. "Miss Rowan," he said slowly, "that's the strange part." "What is?" "There's no such thing as the Blackwater gang, not anymore. They were all caught, or killed, 5 years ago." Rebecca's blood went cold. "5 years," she whispered. "That's right," the sheriff said, nodding. "Wiped out. The last of them was a fella named Ellis. No relation to your Mr. Ellis, of course. A different bunch entirely. No, the Blackwater gang hasn't ridden in this territory since 1871. Rebecca stared at him. Nathan had named them. He'd said it with such certainty. But the robbery, the driver. "Oh, the robbery was real," the sheriff assured her. "Just some new bunch of no-goods, I reckon. But it wasn't the Blackwater gang." She left the office, her mind reeling. Why would he lie? A simple mistake. Maybe he'd just assumed. She walked back to the boarding house, the winter sun feeling cold on her skin. She went to see Mrs. Peterson. "Tell me about Nathan Ellis," she said, trying to sound casual as they sat by the fire. "I told you, dear. A good man. Tragic life." "His wife," Rebecca pressed. "Elizabeth, you said it was childbirth." Mrs. Peterson's knitting needles stopped clicking. She looked around, though they were alone. "That's the story," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. But, the landlady leaned in. "The doctor who delivered the baby. He left town a week later, said he was moving to California, left in the middle of the night. And Elizabeth? She was an Eastern girl, too, like you, educated, came here with her family, met Nathan. They were married within 6 months." Mrs. Peterson sighed. "She was a lovely thing, but quiet, sad-like, especially toward the end." "What do you mean?" "People said Nathan was protective, very protective. After they married, she hardly came to town. He did all the shopping, said she was frail." "And the baby?" "Stillborn," Mrs. Peterson whispered. "And the childbirth was hard. She never recovered. Died 2 days later." "That's tragic," Rebecca said. "It is," Mrs. Peterson agreed, picking up her needles. "But the strangest part." "What?" "No one saw the body." "What are you talking about?" "The funeral. It was a closed casket," Nathan said. "He said the sickness had changed her. He didn't want anyone to remember her that way." Mrs. Peterson shook her head. "Grief does strange things to a man. He buried her and the baby himself, up on his land." Rebecca felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. A man rescuing her, naming a defunct gang, a wife who died under mysterious circumstances, a doctor who fled, a closed casket funeral. This wasn't a romance. This was something dark. March came, and so did Nathan. He arrived at the schoolhouse door, same as before, a smile on his face. This time he brought a crate of slates and chalk. "For the children," he said, his blue eyes warm. Rebecca's heart was a traitor. It pounded in her chest, a mix of fear and something else. Attraction. "This is too generous, Nathan," she said, her voice tight. "It's a practical matter," he said. He invited her to dinner. She accepted. She had to know. Over dinner, she watched him. He was charming. He was attentive. He talked about his cattle, about spring calving. He seemed so normal. "Nathan," she said, setting her fork down, "when you rescued me, you mentioned the Blackwater gang." His eyes met hers. No flicker, no hesitation. "That's right," he said. "Sheriff Holden told me they haven't been active in 5 years." He took a slow sip of water. He set the glass down. "Holden's a good man," Nathan said, his voice low. "But he stays in town. He doesn't ride the high country." "What does that mean?" "It means men like that. They don't just disappear. They scatter. They hide. They wait. It was them. I recognized their leader. You know them? I know of them, he corrected. They're the ones who... He paused. His face darkened. They're the ones who killed my wife's brother, years ago, before she and I ever met. It was plausible. It was reasonable. It explained everything. He reached across the table and covered her hand with his. Rebecca, I don't want you to worry about this. You're safe in Greenwich, and I'm here. His thumb brushed her knuckles. She shivered. He stayed in town for 3 days. They took dinner every night. They walked. They talked about books, about the future. By the time he left, her fears felt foolish. He was a good man, a lonely man, a man who had suffered, who was protective, because the world had taken so much from him. She'd been reading too much Jane Eyre. This wasn't a Gothic novel. This was Colorado. April brought the thaw, and it brought Nathan back. The weather's fine, he said, showing up at the schoolhouse. I thought you might enjoy seeing the countryside. There's a spot outside town. The view is worth the ride. She hesitated, riding out alone with him. I'll have you back before dark, he promised. He'd brought 2 horses, a gentle mare for her. They rode out, the air fresh with pine and melting snow. He was right. The spot was breathtaking. A small rise overlooking the entire valley, the mountains painted gold by the setting sun. He spread a blanket. They sat, a proper distance between them. I never expected this, Rebecca said, her voice soft. To feel so at home here. He turned to her, his blue eyes serious. Rebecca, these past months, coming to town, seeing you, it's been the brightest part of my days. Her breath caught. I find myself thinking about you, he continued, his voice low and rough. When I found you in that coach, I admired your courage. Now I admire your mind, your spirit. He reached for her hand. What I'm trying to say is that I care for you, Rebecca, deeply. Joy, pure and sharp, blossomed in her chest. I care for you too, Nathan. His face lit up. He raised her hand to his lips. I know this is soon, but my intentions are serious. As are mine, she whispered. He leaned in, slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His kiss was gentle, questioning. And then, as she returned it, it became firm, assured. It was a man's kiss, and it sent a shock of heat all the way to her toes. When they parted, the sun had slipped behind the mountains. We should head back, he said, his voice thick. He helped her up, his hands lingering at her waist. The ride back was quiet. Rebecca felt like she was floating. At the boarding house, he helped her dismount. I'll be back in 2 weeks, he said. After Denver, I'll return as soon as I can. I'll be here, she promised. He kissed her hand, his eyes smoldering. Good night, Rebecca. She watched him go, her heart full. Her fears were gone. This was real. This was love. The 2 weeks crawled by. Rebecca was distracted, dreamy. She loved her job, but she loved Nathan. When he finally returned, he looked tired from the journey, but his eyes lit up when he saw her at the schoolhouse. You're back, she breathed. As promised, he said. He walked right up to her desk, took both her hands. I missed you. And I you. He smiled, that rare, transformative smile. I have something to ask you, he said, his voice deep and serious. Her heart began to race. Yes? Rebecca, The schoolhouse door burst open. Mayor Thornton stood there, his face flushed. Miss Rowan, Mr. Ellis. Good, you're both here. Tremendous news. Nathan dropped her hands, stepping back. The State Education Board, the mayor announced, waving a telegram. They've selected Greenwich for a special grant, $500. to expand the school, and funding for a permanent teacher's residence. That's wonderful, Rebecca said, genuinely pleased, though the interruption was agonizing. It's thanks to you, Miss Rowan, the mayor beamed. Your reports, your progress, the board is impressed. Nathan's face was a mask of pride and disappointment. Congratulations, Miss Rowan, he said, his voice formal. The mayor talked for an hour. Plans, committees, meetings. By the time he left, the sun was setting. The intimate moment shattered. I'm sorry, she said. Don't be, he said, shaking his head. This is important news. He glanced out the window. We'll have time to talk, but perhaps not tonight. You have papers. I should see to my horses. Will you be at the council meeting tomorrow to discuss the grant? I wouldn't miss it. He stepped closer, lifted her chin with one finger. What I wanted to say. It can wait, but know this, my feelings haven't changed. Nor have mine, she whispered. His kiss was brief, tender, a promise. Until tomorrow. The town council meeting was packed. Rebecca, sitting at the front, felt a swell of pride as the mayor praised her work. She saw Nathan standing at the back, his tall figure a comfort. Their eyes met, a silent conversation across the crowded room. She spoke passionately about the school, about her idea for a public library. Nathan's voice boomed from the back. I support that idea. Knowledge is a powerful thing. His support turned the tide. The library was approved. After, the townsfolk swarmed her. Congratulations. Questions. It was an hour before she found him, waiting outside in the cool night air. I thought they'd keep you all night, he smiled. It felt like it. He offered his arm. May I walk you home? They strolled in silence, the town quiet around them. He stopped under a gas lamp, turning to face her. Rebecca, he said, what I've been trying to ask you. He took a deep breath. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small velvet box. I had this made in Denver, he said. Her heart stopped. He opened it. A simple gold ring, set with a single perfect sapphire. I know it soon, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I know you have your teaching, your plans, but I love you, Rebecca Rowan. I'm asking, will you be my wife? Tears streamed down her face. Oh, Nathan, if you need time. No, she interrupted, laughing and crying. I don't need time. Yes, yes, I will marry you. He let out a breath he'd been holding, a smile of pure joy lighting his face. He slid the ring onto her finger. It was a perfect fit. It matches your eyes, she whispered. He pulled her into his arms, his kiss deep and passionate, sealing their promise under the moon. We have practical matters to discuss, he murmured against her hair. Where we'll live. Your teaching. Tomorrow, she whispered back. Tonight is just for us. He chuckled, a low, happy sound. Mrs. Peterson will be scandalized. Let her be, Rebecca said, bold and giddy with love. He walked her to the steps, his hand in hers. I'll speak to the mayor tomorrow, he promised. We'll find a way for you to keep teaching. I'd never ask you to give that up. His understanding sealed it. He was the one. Thank you, she said, for seeing me. One last, tender kiss. Good night, my love. She floated up to her room, the sapphire glittering on her finger. She was going to be Mrs. Nathan Ellis. News spread like wildfire. The town was thrilled. Mrs. Peterson was ecstatic. Nathan was true to his word. He and the mayor devised a plan. Rebecca would finish the term. A new teacher, a Miss Harrison, would be hired for the younger children. Rebecca would become a special instructor, teaching advanced subjects 2 days a week. This way, Nathan explained over lunch, you can have your work and we can have our home. Our home, she tested the words. But the ranch, It's 5 miles, in the winter. Our ranch, he corrected gently. And I've been thinking about that. He told her his plans, expanding the library, adding a sitting room. A sudden, absurd thought struck her. Nathan, she said, laughing, I've never actually seen your ranch. He blinked. I was there, but I was half frozen and barely conscious. He grinned. You're right. That's an oversight. The school term ends next Friday. Ride out with me on Saturday. Stay the day. Meet Charlie and his wife properly. See the house. Our house. I'd love that. The week flew by. Her students gave her a handmade card. Saturday dawned bright and clear. Nathan arrived with the gentle mare. The ride was different this time. She wasn't a refugee. She was a future bride. When they crested the final rise, she gasped. The ranch was beautiful. A perfect valley, a creek running through it, cattle grazing peacefully. The house stood proudly, smoke curling from the chimney. Nathan, it's perfect. It's been good to us, he said. Charlie, the foreman, and his wife, Martha, came out to greet them. Martha was plump and warm, her smile genuine. A pleasure, Miss Rowan. Or Rebecca, I should say. She bustled. Congratulations. We're so happy for Nathan. I've made lunch, Martha said. But Nathan, show her the house first. Her house. The house was even better than she remembered. Daylight streamed in. He showed her the main room, the kitchen, his study, the bedroom where she'd stayed. Elizabeth, she had a hand in the planning, he said, his voice calm. She had a good eye. Rebecca was grateful for his honesty. She wasn't replacing Elizabeth. She was starting something new. She must have been remarkable, she said. She was, he nodded. You would have liked her. He showed her the upstairs, 2 more bedrooms, and a small sitting area. I thought this could be your space, he said, for your lessons, or just to read. It was perfect. They toured the barn, the bunkhouse. Everywhere she saw hard work and careful planning. They ended at the creek, sitting on a fallen log. Could you be happy here, Rebecca? He asked, his voice serious. It's isolated, especially in winter. She looked at him, at the strong, kind man who had saved her, who loved her. I believe I could, she said. I'm drawn to this, to building a home. Our home. Relief and joy washed over his face. He took her hand. I want you to know, he said, his voice low. This will be our ranch, not just mine. I've already spoken to my lawyer in Denver. I'm adding your name to the deed. She stared at him. Nathan, that's... No, husbands. The law. I know what the law says, he interrupted gently. I also know what's right. You are my partner, Rebecca. My equal. What's mine is yours. In fact, not just in principle. Tears welled in her eyes. This man. She leaned in and kissed him. Thank you, she whispered against his lips. His arms encircled her, pulling her close. The kiss deepened, the passion they'd held in check in town flaring to life. His hands were in her hair, hers on his chest. We should. Get back, he said, his voice ragged. Martha's lunch. She laughed, alive and giddy. They walked back to the house hand in hand. The future was perfect. Weeks flew. The school term ended. Miss Harrison arrived. The town, led by Mrs. Peterson, threw itself into wedding planning. It would be the event of the summer. Consider it our thanks, the mayor boomed. Besides, it's not every day our most eligible bachelor finally settles down. Nathan groaned when she told him. There was a widow, he admitted, who brought me pies for a year. I had to tell her I wasn't looking. And now, she teased. Now, he said, pulling her close. I can't imagine life without you. The night before the wedding, The town held a dinner at the hotel. Toasts were made. "To Nathan and Rebecca," the mayor cried. "May their marriage be as solid as the mountains." Later, Nathan walked her back to the boarding house for the last time. "This time tomorrow," he said softly, "you'll be Mrs. Ellis." "Mrs. Ellis," she repeated. "I like the sound of it." He kissed her, a tender, restrained kiss. "I'll see you at the church." The wedding day was perfect. Blue skies, bright sun. Mrs. Peterson and the doctor's wife helped her dress. A beautiful ivory silk gown, a gift from the town's women. "Something borrowed," Mrs. Peterson said, offering pearl earrings. "Something blue," the doctor's wife added, a satin ribbon for her bouquet. "Something old," the blacksmith's daughter shyly offered, a lace handkerchief. Tears filled Rebecca's eyes. "Thank you for everything." The church bells rang. Rebecca, escorted by the mayor, walked down the aisle. She only saw him. Nathan, tall and impossibly handsome, in a new dark suit. His eyes never left her, the look on his face. A love so profound it made her heart ache. He took her hand. His was warm and strong. The pastor's words washed over them. They said their vows, his deep voice steady, hers clear and strong. He slipped the gold band on her finger. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the pastor declared. "You may kiss your bride." His kiss was reverent, possessive, perfect. The town square erupted in celebration. Food, music, dancing. Nathan held her, his hand always finding hers. "You dance," she murmured, surprised at his grace. "Elizabeth insisted," he murmured back. "Said no husband of hers would be a wallflower." "I'm grateful to her," Rebecca said, "though I'd love you even with 2 left feet." As the sun set, he leaned in. "Are you ready to go home, Mrs. Ellis?" "Yes," she whispered. They left in a shower of rice, their wagon decorated with a just married sign. Charlie and Martha were staying in town, giving them privacy. The drive to the ranch was quiet, filled with anticipation. When they arrived, the house was glowing. Lanterns lit the porch. A table was set with wine and flowers. "Martha's doing," he said, his voice thick. He secured the horses, then walked to the porch where she waited. Without warning, he swept her into his arms. "Nathan!" she gasped. "Threshold tradition," he smiled, that rare, full smile. He carried her inside. The main room was filled with flowers, soft lamplight. "Welcome home, Mrs. Ellis," he said softly. "Home," she echoed. He poured them wine. They toasted, their eyes saying everything. He set the glasses down. He framed her face with his hands. "I love you, Rebecca Ellis, more than I have words to express." "Show me," she whispered. His kiss was different, deeper, urgent, no longer restrained. She met his passion with her own, her arms winding around his neck. "I want this to be perfect," he murmured, his forehead against hers. "It already is," she breathed, "because it's you." He lifted her into his arms and carried her up the stairs. The bedroom was transformed. Fresh linens, more flowers, a soft fire in the grate. He was patient. He was tender. He helped her with the buttons of her dress, his touch reverent. He whispered words of love that made her soul sing. It was a discovery, a joining, a perfect, beautiful consummation of their love. Later, she lay with her head on his chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "Happy?" he asked, his voice a low rumble. "Completely," she whispered. "I feel whole." "More than I believed possible," he said. "After Elizabeth, I thought that part of my life was over. I never expected to find this, especially not with a half-frozen schoolteacher." She laughed softly, lifting her head. "Life surprises us." "Indeed it does," he said, and pulled her down for another kiss. Rebecca woke to sunlight and the solid warmth of her husband. His arm was draped across her waist. She watched him sleep, the morning light smoothing the lines of care from his face. He looked younger, peaceful. His eyes opened, finding hers instantly. A slow smile spread. "Good morning, Mrs. Ellis," he murmured. "Good morning, husband." He kissed her, a slow, deep kiss that rekindled the fires of the night. Time lost all meaning. Later they sat on the porch, sharing breakfast. The ranch, their ranch, was bathed in sunlight. "What are you thinking?" he asked, taking her hand. She smiled, lacing her fingers with his. "I'm thinking," she said, "how lucky I am that my stagecoach broke down in a blizzard." His blue eyes held hers. "I think," he said, "we were always meant to find each other." She knew he was right. All the broken pieces of her life, her father's death, her journey west, it had all been leading her here, to this man, to this home. But as she looked at her hand, at the two rings on her finger, the sapphire and the gold, a strange detail from the night before pricked at her memory. A tiny, insignificant thing. When he had been undressing her, unlacing the back of her ivory gown, his fingers had been so sure, so practiced, not clumsy, like a man unaccustomed to the task, but quick, efficient, like a man who had unlaced a woman's dress many, many times before. She pushed the thought away. He was a widower. Of course he'd had a wife. But the thought had come, and it wouldn't leave. "Rebecca?" he asked, sensing her shift. "Nothing," she smiled, leaning over to kiss him. "Just happy." But she was a schoolteacher. She was trained to notice details, and she'd noticed another one. Upstairs, in the back of the wardrobe, tucked away in the drawers where he'd put her new clothes. She'd found something. A small bundle of letters, tied with a blue satin ribbon. The exact same blue ribbon the doctor's wife had given her for her bouquet. Something blue, she had said. Rebecca had assumed it was just a coincidence, a common ribbon. But now, sitting in the bright morning sun, a shadow passed over her heart. She thought about the other items. Something borrowed, the pearl earrings from Mrs. Peterson. Something old, the lace handkerchief from the blacksmith's daughter. Something blue, the ribbon from the doctor's wife. A new dress, a gift from the town's women. It was a wedding, a perfect, beautiful wedding, thrown by a generous, loving town. A town that had been trying to match Nathan for years. A town that was ecstatic he had finally settled down. A town that had, piece by piece, supplied her entire wedding. It was almost programmatic, like they had done it before. "Nathan," she said, her voice casual, "tell me about Miss Harrison, the new teacher." "What about her?" he asked, sipping his coffee. "Is she settling in? Does she like the boarding house?" "I suppose so," he shrugged. "Mrs. Peterson will take good care of her. She's good at that." "Yes," Rebecca said, her smile feeling stiff. "She is." Mrs. Peterson, who had never known Nathan to take a woman to dinner. Mrs. Peterson, who had supplied the something borrowed. Mrs. Peterson, who had told her the story of Elizabeth's closed casket funeral. A cold dread, familiar and sharp, settled in her stomach. She thought about the stagecoach, stranded, 15 miles from town. The driver, shot dead. The Blackwater gang. A name that hadn't been spoken in 5 years. A name that only Nathan had used. A name he'd explained away, so plausibly. They were his wife's brother's killers. His first wife's brother. Elizabeth, the woman who died. The woman no one saw. "What is it, Rebecca?" Nathan asked, his voice hardening. The warm husband replaced by the wary rancher. "Nothing," she said, forcing a smile. "Just thinking about the future." "Good," he said, his smile returning. But his His blue, beautiful eyes were cold. They were watching her. And that's when Rebecca Rowan Ellis, the Boston schoolteacher, understood. She wasn't the first. She wasn't the woman he had finally chosen. She was just the next. The town hadn't been celebrating a wedding. They'd been celebrating a successful harvest. They'd found him a new wife, a new Elizabeth. And what, she wondered, her blood turning to ice water. What had happened to the last one, the one whose clothes she'd worn? Sarah, his sister. What happened to the sisters and the wives who came before her, the ones who didn't work out? She looked at her hand, the sapphire ring. It matches your eyes, she'd said. He'd known her eye color before he'd even proposed, because the ring hadn't been made in Denver for her. It was waiting, just like the dress, just like the house, just like the town, and just like the closed casket funeral. How long, she wondered, before her frail constitution kept her from town? How long before she, too, was buried on a lonely hill in a closed box because the sickness had changed her? I think, she said, standing up, her voice trembling only slightly, I'll go for a walk, down by the creek. A wonderful idea, he said, standing with her. I'll come with you. No, she said, her voice firm. I just need some time to think, to absorb it all. He studied her, a long, hard look. Then he smiled. Of course, my love, he said. Take all the time you need. I'll be right here, waiting for you. She walked away, her legs steady. She did not run. She walked toward the creek. She was a Boston schoolteacher. She was smart. She was a survivor. She had survived a blizzard. She had survived a robbery. Now she just had to survive her own wedding night. And the man who was watching her from the porch, his blue eyes cold as the December ice. What do you think she's going to do? What would you do? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story and want to hear what happens next, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You don't want to miss the ending to this one.